The first speaker in this session is Victor Malka, our guest from École Polytechnique in France, one of the main experts in the field of laser acceleration. And the subject of his talk is laser plasma accelerators, status and applications.
Okay, shalom everybody. I apologize, I do not speak Hebrew. It's a pleasure to be in Israel and especially to attend this conference. And I hear during this morning sessions a very, very interesting presentation, and I'm very pleased to see the excellence of the activity that is done in Israel on the plasma physics. So I'm going to speak on another topic which is related to a new approach to accelerate particles by using a very intense laser. So I will explain you why it's interesting and what we can have today and what we can do with these laser plasma accelerators. So I start with the context and the motivation. There are two kinds of motivations. The first one is related to the market, and the accelerator market is very important. It's of the order of few billion of euro every year. And you can see in this table the different applications that you can have with accelerators. For example, for medical application with cancer therapy or for the production of radioisotope for imaging cancer tumor. And you can see here the number of appareils of systems that has been sold until 2007 with the cost of each machine. And this gives you this number, which is quite impressive, of a few billion of euros. There are also applications, for example, for security, for inspection, what we call non-destructive material inspection, and many, many other applications. So there's first motivation is to see where we can compete with this new technique using laser plasma accelerator with this already well-known approach. Of course, there is a second motivation, which is related to research, to fundamental research. And in this view graph, you can see by looking at the evolution of the luminosity and the energy of the particle, how you are able to go from the beginning. It was more than 150 years ago with the discovery of the cathodic tube by Joseph Thomson. And with this machine, he was able to study the structure of the atom more precisely, to see and to demonstrate that hydrogen has one electron and one proton. Then after, we have to wait about 30 years in order to have the first cyclotron machine. It was a discovery made by Ernest Lawrence, the very famous physicist, American physicist, who got the Nobel Prize with this discovery, with an investment cost of about 25 euro at this time. And this machine allowed to produce the first artificial radioisotope, and it was very, very important. Then after, we have to wait a few 10 years later in order to have what we call the big science, where the people work together and build large-scale accelerator in order to study the structure, this time, of the nucleus. Then, after, you see the evolution, and you know that last year, this was the demonstration of the Higgs boson theory with the discovery of the Higgs boson particles, where they get the Nobel Prize for using probably the most expensive accelerator in the world that deliver a 3.5 TeV proton beam. So you can see that this evolution allows you to probe the matter in the 10 to minus 10 meter angstrom level to 10 to minus 20 levels. So all this machine, they rely on the use of radio frequency cavities, and these cavities doesn't allow to produce an electric field larger than a few tenths of megavolt per meter. And if you go over this value, you break down your cavity and you have to replace it. And because the field is limited, what you do if you want to increase the particle energy is that you have to increase the length over which you accelerate the particles. That's why you have also to increase the cost. So this is an example of the LHC. It's 27-kilometer long accelerator, circular accelerator, which is about the size of the peripheric, the Circle Road in Paris. So this gives you an idea of how big are this machine. So we are considering now because we want to reduce the size of the accelerator, and probably the next accelerator will be the ELC, a linear electron-positron collider, and it will have 40 kilometers long, and we know that we will not go behind this value, and I discussed with people at CERN that this is the maximum length that we will use to accelerate particles using conventional technique. So this is why a plasma appears to be a good medium, because as you know, plasma is ionized medium, so it can support very high electric field. So this is a picture of the RF cavity. It's metallic cavity, as I told you, and the field that you can produce is limited to 50-55 megavolt per meter maximum. Okay, now if you consider a plasma cavity, the equivalent of this one, but in a plasma medium, so this is a simulation where you can see the laser that has propagated in this direction, and it has created this density perturbation, so it's an ISO density representation. This is what we call a relativistic plasma wave, and what is very important to notice is that the length here, it's about 100 micron, and over 100 micron you can have similar gain, meaning that the field that you produce can be larger than few hundreds of gigavolt per meter. So it's easily 1,000 times greater than what you can have using conventional radio frequency cavities. What is very important to address as a message is today we can really manipulate in the plasma the electrons in order to have this collective motion that is needed in order to accelerate particles. And I will explain you how it works. So this was the first challenge that we have to face 15 years ago, to convince accelerator people that with laser and plasma medium it will be possible to manipulate this electron in this coherent way. And the second challenge that we have to face was to convince the accelerator people, the plasma people, and even ourselves that it will be possible to inject very locally the electron into this arch feature. And this size is 20 micron, and this distance is about 10-20 microns. So you imagine how difficult it is to put few electrons at this place and accelerate them. And I will show you that it works and that we managed to do so. So it's very similar to cold atom physics, where you have optical trap and you try to cool down the atom. Here it's different. You have an electronic trap that moves at the speed of light, and you want to trap some electron into this trap. So how it works, you need a laser, a powerful laser, and if you use this laser, you focus the laser, so it's about 20 micron west. And this laser propagates from left to right, and it creates a wake field because there is a force which is equal to the minus the gradient of intensity. It means that the force will push the electron from the high intensity region to the low intensity region. So the laser passes, it pushes the electrons are moving, and then after the laser cuts its maximum intensity, and it pushes back the electron in the opposite direction. And since the ions are very heavy, they didn't have time to move, the electron oscillates. So this is the way you create the wake field. Okay? And since you separate the electron from the ions, you have a longitudinal electric field, and this is the field that we use to accelerate the particles. So the laser propagates, creates this density perturbation to which corresponds the longitudinal electric field. And since the group velocity of the laser is close to the speed of light, we are working in a very tenuous, very underdense plasma, the phase velocity are very close to the speed of light. This is why we call this plasma the relativistic plasma wave. So it's very similar to a boat on the lake that propagates and creates this wake. Okay, so in the reality, so this is one-day picture. If you see now the simulation, you can see the laser that propagates and it creates a wake field. And because you have nonlinear process like relativistic self-focusing, relativistic self-compression of the laser, the size of the laser will be reduced, which increase the ponderomotive force, which push more efficiently the electron, not only forward and backward, but also radially. And you can see here this cavitated region. So because of this, you are able to excite a very intense plasma wave here that you can see, to which corresponds this longitudinal electric field. And also because you push the electron away laterally, you create a radial electric field that we can use to produce X-ray. So I will show you one way to control the injection in the colliding laser pulse scheme. And this is the laser that we use in our lab. It's a small laser. It's 1 joule laser, and that delivers 30 femtosecond laser pulses, and this is a picture where you have the table here. You can see the pump laser in green, and these are the pump laser, and we send the laser because after the compressor, the laser cannot propagate in air. You have to propagate the laser in vacuum, and you have all this target chamber in order to send the laser in the target direction that where you want to do your experiment. So to control the injection, I explain you the motivation. I explain you how you create this accelerating structure. Now we need to inject the electron, and we inject the electron from the plasma itself. We do not use an external injector, because external injector cannot deliver a femtosecond electron bunch today. So you have to find a way to inject the electron from the plasma itself. So what we do is this. We take a laser pulse, that's great, that's Wakefield, I explained you how it works before, and then you take another laser coming in the opposite direction, and when the two lasers collide, they beat together. So during this beating, you can hit some of the electron, so this electron get enough energy, and this energy allow them to be trapped by this plasma wave. And this is the way these electrons are injected very locally and accelerated by the Wakefield created by the pump laser. So it works, and this is a movie. So imagine you move at the speed of light in the frame of this laser. You see the opposite laser come, beat, inject electron, and this electron move on this direction. So we did this experiment, and this is a picture of the experimental setup where we have the pump laser coming in this direction, focused with a spherical mirror onto a target, a gas jet. We send a laser on the opposite direction. You have the beating here, the injection. The electrons are deviated by a dipole, and we record the signal on the LANXESS screen. So this is the real picture. So you can see it's very crowded. The chamber is 50 centimeter diameter. This is 1 millimeter gas jet. And you have to use all this cable because imagine that you have to align a laser with 20 micron waste. Okay? So the precision of the measurement must be very, very accurate. And also, 30 femtosecond, you know, it's about 10 micron in the space, the equivalent. So it means that you need really to have a perfect control. This is why you need to finalize the alignment under vacuum condition with all this cable that motorize the mirror and the optics. So if you are not familiar with this kind of laser, I represent here the pump laser. It's disc of light, okay, of about 5 centimeter diameter and 10 micron thickness, and this is the injection laser pulse. So we use two laser pulse, the pump and the injection pulse. And we can see what's happened in the vacuum chamber. If I found the mouse, so okay, so the laser go through the mirror, and then it go to the spherical mirror. It will concentrate its energy to a small focal spot, collide, create the electron on the gas jet. The electron go through the dipole magnet, are deviated, and impact the scintillator screen, and we record this on a computer, a single-shot measurement. And this is a very nice electron spectra that we obtain. You can see we can have a very nice spectra with energy up to 250 MeV, and this is the distribution, dN over dE. And you can see it's very narrow distribution. We get a lot of pressure from accelerator physicists, and I have to say that today we have the support from this community. We have the support from CERN. We have the support from all the different accelerator community agencies, and they really ask us to participate to all their projects. And one of the major pressure that we get is to demonstrate the reliability of this approach. And to do that, this is the experiment we did in the colliding. We have here 28 consecutive shots where you can see that you always have the electron beam with the same quality and with the same parameter. So it's really very reliable, and this is probably a message that I like to address to the plasma community, is that a plasma, for most of the physicists, is something that cannot be stable. And for the first time, even using such a powerful laser, we are able to have a process that is very, very, very stable. So it's very important also to communicate to other researchers, not plasma physicists, that plasma can be masterized. So what is very interesting using the scheme is that you can control the parameter of the electron beam. For example, if you change the delay between the two pulses, you change the position where the two pulses collide. In other words, you change the length of your accelerator. So this is an early injection. And if you change the delay, you can see you can change the accelerating distance. And if you do so, and it's very easy, you press a button on the delay line, and you control continuously the electron energy. Okay, and this is a summary where you can see the control that you can have on the electron energy by changing the collision position. There is another thing that we can control, which is the charge. So to explain how it works, I represent here in this momentum phase diagram the 1D separatrix, okay, of the plasma wave. And here in blue, it's the longitudinal momentum that an electron can get when it is submitted to the beating of the two laser pulses. And this calculation can be done in the case of circular polarized laser. So all these electrons that are above the red curve and below the blue curve are injected here. Okay, so you can see that this is a large area. And if you decrease this blue curve, and it's easy to do so because you can reduce the intensity of the injection laser pulses, and you see here you reduce by a factor of 4 the vector normalized potential, and here you can see that you have reduced this area, so the number of electrons is smaller, but also the length of the electron bunch that you inject is smaller. So you can control at the same time the charge and the length of the bunch. There is another way to control this, is to change the density. You know, the plasma wavelength depends on the density of the medium. So if you reduce the density, you increase the plasma wavelength. It means that you stretch this red curve. So there are different buttons you can play with in order to control the charge and the energy spread. So this is one example where I show you how you can control the charge by changing the density, so from 10 to the 19 to 1.6 10 to the 19, and you can see that you have increased the charge from picocoulomb, 2 picocoulomb, to about 100 picocoulomb. So it's very, very, very sensitive to the electron density. So you need to characterize and control precisely the electron density, which is very easy because we use a gas. So if you control the gas density, you control the plasma electron density. So this is one way to do so, to control the charge. But when you change the density, you also change the way the laser propagates and create the wake field. So this is not necessarily the best way to control the charge. The best way is to have the same acceleration behavior. It means that you do not change the parameter, which is the density, but you change the intensity of the injection laser. So this is what we did when we changed the intensity of the laser from a vector potential to 0.4 to 0.4 down to 0.1, and you can see that again you can control the charge and the electron, the charge and the energy spread. So we improve using the beam loading effect the quality of the electron beam. And this is a very accurate measurement that we did with a very high resolution electron spectrometer. And you can see that we have now a 1% relative energy spread with our accelerator. So it's very, very competitive accelerator approach. So there is another very important parameter. We'd like to insist on this parameter, which is the current. So we measure using a CTR, coherent transition radiation diagnostics, the bunch length of your electron bunch. So this is the experimental data that fit very nicely with the theoretical curve that correspond to a bunch length of about 1.5 femtoseconds. So using that diagnostic that is very sensitive to the length of the bunch, you can have a very accurate measurement of the bunch length. And since we measure the charge at the same time, we arrive to the conclusion that we have a peak current of about few kiloamps. So I don't know if you are aware about that, but the kiloamps level is one of the most highest current that you can have with accelerator. For example, at SLAC, the electron beam that I have used in order to saturate the free electron laser, LCLAs, has a peak current which is equivalent to this one. So just to give you a test of the quality of this electron beam. So I'm going now to show you some example of application. So we can use this electron beam for radiotherapy, for many applications, but I will concentrate on the possible use of this electron beam to produce a very bright X-ray source. So one way to do it is to use the Compton approach. So what is the Compton approach? You have a relativistic electron going in this direction. You send a laser in the opposite direction, and the frequency of the laser is upshifted by a factor which is enormous. If you have a relativistic electron, it scales as the square of the Lorentz factor, it means the energy of the electron. So if you have a visible light, you can go very easily in the KeV range, even in the MeV range using this technique. And what is very nice when you use this technique is that if you have a bright electron beam, you automatically have a bright X-ray beam. And this is why this approach is very interesting in our case, because you restore the property of duration of source size of the electron bunch that are excellent. I am speaking about 1 femtosecond and 1 micron to the parameter of the X-ray beam that you can generate. So to do so, we did this experiment, which is very simple. We just put a very thin foils after the target. So we have the laser that create the wake field and inject the electron, and the laser interact with this target, create the plasma at the surface. So this plasma will reflect the laser, and the laser will interact automatically with the electron beam. So doing this, you don't have to care about any alignment, because the laser will be aligned, and you don't care about synchronization, because you have a perfect synchronization between the two, and you produce very efficiently an X-ray beam in the forward direction. And at the same time, you don't need to have another extra laser, because you use the laser energy that go through the CAS target that we have used to accelerate the electron. So we characterize this X-ray beam spatially. Here you can see the beam, the X-ray beam. We put different filters in order to have the different energy of this beam, and these are the measurements here. And this is a comparison with the theoretical calculation. So we have about 10 to 8 photons per shot, and the brightness of the source, taking into account of the different parameters, is about 10 to 21 in synchrotron unit. So the source size has been also measured using a knife edge techniques, and from this measurement we can deduce a source size of about 1.5 micron, which corresponds to the expected value, knowing that the beam size of the electron bunch is about 1 micron. So we use it, for example, to radiograph different objects, for example, the USB key here, and you can see here the details. So you can also produce using a very similar setup, but you use here a target which is thicker, and this target is composed of heavy elements. And in this case, the electrons go and they slow down and they produce a Bremsstrahlung radiation, which is very efficient if you use IZ target. For example, you use a Tantal converter here, and we have an object here coming from CA. It's an étalon object. So it's a sphere of Tantal, which is closed, and inside you have a lot of details, and we want to image the details that are inside this target. So this is very important for non-destructive material inspection, and there is a lot of interest from military people about this development. So this is the target. So we cut the target just to have the possibility to see what you have inside. And this is the source size, the image that we got in 2005. We got 400 micron resolution. So you can see here the details. We improve the parameter of the source, and here this is the image we obtained 3 years ago, where we have 50 micron resolution, and you can see very nicely the details. So this is a very important development that interests not only military purpose, but also there is an interest if you want to, for example, Areva is very interesting if you want to see if there are some default into the tube that you use and that are under very high pressure and this kind of application, but also airspace or our car industries. So I'm going now, during the 2 last minutes I have, to present what can be the future and what we didn't yet explore. So one application which is very, very interesting and that the people in your community has identified is the use of laser plasma accelerator in order to produce compactly a free electron laser. So even if the parameter of the electron beam, I told you 10 to minus 2 energy spread, relative energy spread, you can use it, and there are new ideas in order to overcome this difficulty, for example, using a quadruple here and here, and to use a chicken to elongate the electron beam. So you can, because you have an energy spread which is not too small, focus the electron beam at different positions along the ondulator, and this is what we call the supermatching condition. In this case, you can have this radiation can be amplified during the propagation of the electron beam because you start to modulate the initial electron beam. And you can also stabilize this process as soon as you decide to inject a seed, which can be high harmonic or second or third harmonic. So this is what we plan to do in the future in collaboration with the group of Marie-Emmanuelle Coupry at Soleil. And this is a very exciting topic because you know that this free electron laser is a big market and it costs about €1 billion. So our idea is to demonstrate the possibility to have a gain using this compact approach, but to work at a rep rate that is not 10 kilohertz, because we never get to 10 kilohertz with this powerful laser, but at a rate of about 1 hertz or 10 hertz. And there is still a lot of interest from the scientific community to have a free electron radiation, bright radiation, in the range of keV with a rep rate of at this level, 1 hertz. So this is the use of laser plasma accelerator compact with ondulators that can be quite long. But now there is this possibility, and this is a new idea that I want to explore. I got another grant, URC grant, to do that. And the idea is the following. So if you see this picture, this is in logarithmic scale the length of the period in meter of the ondulator. And you have here the value of the magnetic field that you need, or the electric field that you need in order to go to the gain region. So today, the people use conventional wigglers, and you see it's a centimeter distance period, and you want to go and to see, and this is the possible new scheme that you can have. And to do that, I consider the use of nanowires. So if you have this kind of nanowires that you can assemble in space according to this disposition, if you send a laser and these nanowires at high intensity, you can remove the electron from each nanowires. You can hit this electron and create a strong electric field. Now, you have this electric field. You assemble this nanowire. The electron can ski, wiggles around this structure and produce a radiation. So this is the idea, and this is a result of a full peak simulation taking into account of a laser, the wake field, the ionization, the heating of the radiation that you can produce. And I can tell you, it's not clear here, but you can have a brightness of 10 to 23 in the X-ray range, and you can tune this source by changing the electron energy. So I conclude. I hope that I convince you that this is very interesting for many purposes, for the design for future accelerator, for the conception of compact X-ray source and many, many applications. And this is an image, contrast image that has been obtained using the Betatron source. And I finish. It's very interesting field of research, and I hope that in the future there will be a very nice activity on this field in Israel. And I would like to conclude by say a few words. Many, many thanks to my co-workers that are excellent. I have a chance to have an excellent team of PhD, postdoc, and of course researchers. And thanks my many institutions for the money they give me to do this work. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Victor, for this very nice talk. Questions? Who proven? They just pointed out. There's a question, sir.
You showed this experiment where you reach MEV type energies for the electrons. This is still much lower than the linear accelerator. So what is needed in this field to bridge the gap and go maybe to GeV or TeV energy?
Okay, so right now the record is about 4 GeV, and this is the result of an experiment we did in Korea with a petawatt class laser. So this is the record, the GeV. But if you think about TeV, the maximum energy is one thing, but this is not the main thing. The main thing is the luminosity. So if you think of using laser plasma accelerator for high energy purpose, we can speak about this in 50 years from now, because it will cost a lot. If you do the calculation, and I did the calculation using the parameter of click, you know that you will need 1,000 bunch of electrons at 1 TeV with 1 nanocoulomb charge per second. You arrive that you need like a 10 megawatt just for the electron beam. So today you have 1% of efficiency from the laser energy to the electron beam, so you arrive to 1 gigawatt, and you have 1% efficiency from the world to the laser. So you arrive to crazy number. So we are not speaking, or you are not even imagining to use laser plasma accelerator. At least I never said that. And nevertheless, we have the support from CERN because this is important. We have to go in this direction. Okay, and we will see how the technology will evolve. And also, I'm speaking about laser, but you can use proton beam as a driver, and proton beam already exists. You have megajoule of proton beam, and there is a project at CERN, and I'm involved in this project, where you can imagine to use the proton beam to create the wake field in the plasma. So all the physics that you learn with the laser, you can translate it to other field.
Yes, one more.
How many electrons in your scheme of colliding two laser beams? How many electrons do you have in your bunch?
It's about 10 to 8, a few 10 to 8 electrons.
One thing I didn't understand. What is the? How do you get the 200 MeV? What is the scaling with the parameters of the laser with the wavelengths? Why 200 MeV?
So as you have seen, we can tune the energy from 50 to 200 MeV by changing the accelerating length. What is fixed right now in this experiment was the amplitude of the field. And the amplitude of the field depends on the amplitude of the laser. So typically, this experiment was about 200 gigavolt per meters. So you can reduce the amplitude of the field, and in this case, you will need a longer distance to have the same gain by changing, for example, the laser energy.
Victor, if you want to inject an electron beam inside, or if you want to cascade a number of accelerators like this, is there a problem of trapping the electrons, bringing them from open trajectories of the trap into trap trajectories?
So,
how do you do that?
Yeah, so we know exactly what is the trapping energy. So the electron need to have enough energy to be trapped. If they are too slow, the wake field go through and the electron is not trapped. So we know for each density, for each value of the electric field, you can calculate the trapping energy. What is very important if you want to inject them is that you need to have a very short electron bunch. If the bunch is too long, then the electron will see accelerating and decelerating field. So you will never get a chance to have a very nice, narrow electron distribution.
And you have to inject them abruptly so that
So this is
they will enter into the trap. Right?
Yeah. So this is why this development is very important for the design of stages, because now we have a femtosecond electron bunch, and this is what you need. And of course, you need to synchronize them without any delay if you want to have the same electron beam.
Thank you. Oh, one more question, Amnon.
Just a comment that there is one point connecting to free electron laser. Another one is that what you call the inverse Compton pattern is actually a free electron laser with an electromagnetic wiggler.
Yeah.
And there when we get the 4 gamma squared factor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's depends. We can call it Mainver Compton or, yeah, I know. But in this case, there is no gain. There is no amplification in the experiment I have shown.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Victor.
Thank you,
And
Thank you so much.